and they import timbers and logs, and they have developed their own wood processing industry, the neighboring country of Laos. But we try to do so, to develop in Laos the wood processing industry, but it is hard to do, because we lack the capital to invest in upgrading the technologies and the skills to produce the necessary, the right quality product for the market. And these are the things that we need to solve. It's not just that we want to do it and we can do it. Thank you.
So I would like to draw this discussion on thinking ahead and planning for the future to a close. If I were to summarize this panel in one or two sentences, if I may, there would be two sentences that come out. There seems to be a great deal of technology optimism in all the statements. Of course, from Eric, and he shows how telecom is, facilitating all kinds of things, economic and social activities. Even Facebook and Twitter are now widely available around the Caribbean and the Latin American region, thanks to the telecom facilities, etc. So, technology optimism and a lot of resource pessimism. That comes out very clearly, especially from what Alex said, but also I think in other discussions throughout, resource pessimism in the sense of great instability in prices, unsustainable ways of using those resources, running out of them, volatility, price instability. Now the underlying conclusion is that the picture for the future is bright, because the North has technology and the South has resources. So trade will happen. Trade is possible. As an economist, this is the clear, inescapable conclusion of what you have said this afternoon in conclusion of the seminar. Will it be easy? No, because clearly, resources are essentially undervalued today. And they are, Rob Davis said this very clearly, we take dirt out of the floor, out of the ground, and then we sell it. Now this is what must change. We must move away from this kind of system. And Alex is calling for that, right? In your statement, try to get away from short-termism, but it's very difficult, but it needs to be done. Clearly, technology transfer, technology adaptation will require mechanisms like aid for trade to make that happen. Senator Malo Forte explicitly referred to that. She said, ICT is driving trade, a very strong statement, not quite true, I believe, but in any case, I'll gloss over it. And it's not the only driver, there are a number of other key drivers, but it's a very important one. And that availability and scope for, I'm sure she wished a right of reply. I should give you a right of reply on this issue. But, the scope for transfer of technology must be enhanced. This is a key function of aid for trade. It's also a key obligation of the international trade organizations, including, of course, the WTO, the UNCTAD, and the ITC. Moving to that part of our discussion and comments, I think there were very pertinent suggestions. And I would think it's fair to say that on some of these, ITC and also, of course, WTO and UNCTAD are already working. On voluntary standards, we have a major initiative to improve transparency in voluntary standards. We call it the Trade for Sustainable Development Program. And we are collecting and disseminating information on voluntary standards. There is a distinct danger that standards are used as barriers, maybe not intended, but it nevertheless is a distinct risk. And the research and literature survey we have undertaken, colleagues of mine have undertaken, shows these issues quite clearly. And this is a very important risk that must be dealt with and addressed, must be mitigated to the extent possible. Here, rules will have to come into play, and an institution like the WTO will have to take that on. It will have to be brought to the multilateral agenda. A question or a comment was about the involvement of women in coffee. We actually address that issues at ITC. We have a program in Uganda, where we try to research into the involvement. So I think the answer is forthcoming, although I cannot share it with you at this stage. The broader and wider comments that came from Ambassador Bhatia, and this is the crux of the matter, to move from volume to value and to enhance value creation in the developing countries. How to insert, as Professor Pankaj said, how to insert yourself into value chains in a sustainable but also profitable way, so that a larger slice of that value accrues to the basic producers. This goes back to the question of living wage. Living wage, can be realized only if larger shares of the value accrue to the basic producers and also the basic intermediaries in developing countries. This is what ITC stands for. This is what it was set up for. This is why we focus on the market access issue, but we also focus on specific aspects of the supply capacity, in particular like certification and information on trade, etc. This is a massive task, but we must address it. Coming back to the suggestions of Ambassador Bhatia, these indeed are very challenging and wide-ranging, much wider than the work that we presently undertake. Physical infrastructure will need the development banks and the World Bank to be involved. Where we formulate strategies, we try to bring in such kind of players in the implementation of the strategies. We have some successes, but it's not by no means it's a lot of unfinished agenda there. The quality or better technology, to summarize it very briefly, that's I think the key for the future. And getting into that technology ladder, stepping up the technology ladder is indeed the key, I think a key message. China is successfully doing it. Today we hear with Eric's company, a Chinese company, provides services, Latin American, Caribbean, in your own case, living example that the emerging economies are not just markets but also sources of technology today. It's a change that we must really take care of. How to incentivize the financial system to get away from short-termism. It's, Keynes historically made the most short-termist remarkable. In the long run, we're all that, so therefore, even in economics, we often look at 2, 3, 5 years frameworks. We need to look much longer, but we can't suggest that. In terms of terms, I must say that my time is up, but we had some very key remarks. As for the UN Joint Pension Fund, I'll give you a little session after this on that matter, but it has lost about 30% of its assets over the last year or so. That I can also share with the audience. I think this would be the point to hand over back to Professor Pankaj and invite our Executive Director.
Thank you very much, Willem. And Willem had the job of being the rapporteur, so I was more focused on just processing the remarks that our panelists made and that the audience made from a very personal perspective. Let me just take a few minutes to share with you at least some of what I thought I came up with after putting everything through that filter. I guess the thing that was most striking to me about the session was the incidence of discussion of market failures. So obviously all our discussion of standards very focused on information-related market failures. We also talked about market failures associated with externalities, both negative externalities of the sort that global warming is the leading example, and positive externalities in the sense that ICT, for instance, can be a very, very powerful tool for changing societies in ways that the vendors may share a portion of the proceeds, but that really has value that goes well beyond what's capturable in the monetized market transactions. And even the small numbers problem came up when we were talking about potash, because having looked at that case a little bit, there are many issues there, including Saskatchewan's control of 53% of world potash deposits, an export cartel, an outsider trying to get into that export cartel, etc. Now, I wouldn't notice market failures because this is what I studied as a graduate student in industrial